Okay, people, one more video here on solving our quadratics. This is going to be kind of a big one, but I'm going to go fast so that way it's not a super long video. But we're talking about solving any quadratic by using any of our methods. So that's our learning objective for today. Now remember, those four methods were factoring, taking square roots, completing the square, or using that quadratic formula. So let's do one example from each from our Delta Math assignment, and then we'll call it a day. First off, factoring. Remember those steps. Setting it equal to 0, then factoring it out, separating those parentheses, both equal to 0, and then solving. So take a look at this one here. We have x squared minus 17 equals negative 1. If I'm going to use that one there, this is going to end up as a special case. This is going to be a nice one. But x squared minus 17 equals negative 1. First step is to set equal to 0. So we need to get this to 0 by doing that opposite by adding it to both sides. And when I do that, I get my x squared still because that doesn't change with a constant being moved over. But negative 17 plus 1 becomes negative 16 equals 0. Now it follows that difference of two squares pattern. So we could factor this thing out. And if I do, I'm going to get x and x in my parentheses. And then what times itself makes 16? 4 times 4 does. One of them's plus, one of them minus. There we go. Now I could go to step 3, which is to separate them and set them both equal to 0. So I have x plus 4 equals 0, and I have x minus 4 equals 0. Now I could solve each one of those, which is the last and final step, by doing those opposites. So instead of plus 4, we're going to minus 4, minus 4. And instead of minus 4, we're going to add 4. Now the nice thing when you're doing this with 0, you don't really have to do anything, right? Because the 0 will not change it. So if I have 0 minus 4, then it ends up as that minus 4. It ends up as that negative 4. If I have 0 plus 4, then it ends up as that positive 4. Quick little reminder video on factoring. Does that make sense? Negative 4, positive 4. Okay, so that's factoring. Now let's take a look at solving one with our square roots. I have 2 times x plus 3 squared equals 18. 2 times x plus 3 squared equals 18. Let me just double check, make sure I got that one right. I'm pretty sure I do. 2 x plus 3 squared, 18. Okay, let's jam. So, first off, use inverses to get the exponent alone. This is a good example because we're not all alone on this side. We have our parentheses squared, which is good. The stuff inside won't matter for right now. But we have that times 2 on the outside. We have to get rid of that first. And to get rid of multiplying, I divide. That way it cancels out. So all I have left is x plus 3 squared on this side. On the other side, I have 18 divided by 2, which becomes 9. Now, I go to step 2, which is take that square root. And whenever I take the square root, I take it of both sides, and that's going to make this become a positive and a negative answer. So on the left, it cancels that stuff out. All I have is what was left on the inside, which is x plus 3. On this side, I have plus minus square root of 9, which just becomes plus or minus 3, because 9 can break down to 3 times 3. So here it is. Now the last step is use inverses to get rid of anything left. I have a plus 3, so I've got to get rid of it. To get that x all alone, I have to minus 3. And this is where sometimes it gets a little confusing. But remember, this plus minus 3 means we have two answers. So we're going to have x equal negative 3 plus or minus 3, which just means I have negative 3 plus 3, or I have negative 3 minus 3. And we can simplify those. Negative 3 plus 3 becomes 0. Negative 3 minus 3 becomes negative 6. There's my two answers. 0 and negative 6. Okay, that's half the methods. Now we get to some of the bigger ones. We're talking to completing the square here first. So let's work on this one. X squared minus 48 equals 2x. X squared minus 48 equals 2x. Oops. X squared minus 48 equals 2x. Okay, step one, make sure zero's on one side. It's definitely not. So let's move that to the other side by doing its opposite, by subtracting. So I have x squared minus 2x minus 48 equals 0. Now cut b in half and square it. So I'm going to focus on this side here. We'll leave the 48, negative 48 on this side here for now. And still equals 0. I have x squared minus 2x. So I'm going to cut that negative 2 in half, and then square it. Negative 2 divided by 2 equals negative 1. And then we want to square that negative 1. So what's negative 1 times negative 1? Positive 1. And then to keep everything balanced, we'll subtract 1 here. Now I'm going to have my parentheses, x minus 1 times x minus 1 minus 49 equals 0. Solve with square roots and inverses. Okay, so first, let me just do one last thing. You know how I have two of these and they're identical? Let's put it together with one exponent of squared to make it a little simpler. X minus 1. And then I'm going to jump ahead and work with some of this inverse. I'm going to move that negative 49 to the other side, which just makes it positive 49, right? Just adding it to the other side. Now I can solve with square roots and my inverses. So let's take the square root of this thing, which again, just like our square root method, makes this a positive negative case. So I get x minus 1 equals positive and negative square root of 49, which also works out nice because square root of 49 is just 7. Now, almost done. Let's get rid of that minus 1 by adding it to both sides. So I get x equals 1 plus or minus 7, which means 1 plus 7 and 1 minus 7, which gets us 8, 1 plus 7, and negative 5. Oh my goodness, no. I jumped ahead of the game. This should be 1 minus 7, which would make this negative 6. Oops, sorry about that, guys. So 8 and negative 6. Jeez, can you imagine? All that work and we just mess up on that? Huh. And there we have it. One more method to review, solve any of these quadratics. Well, we could also use the quadratic formula. I have 12t squared minus 25t plus 12 equals 0. 12t squared. I forgot it already. Sorry, guys. Minus 25t plus 12 equals 0. Okay, our quad formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. And that's all divided by 2 times a. Let's plug in our values here. There's my A value, 12, so let's plug in our 12s. Let's plug in our B value, which is negative 25. Oh, that's a nice double negative there. Negative 25. Okay, and then let's plug in our C value, which is the positive 12 yet again. And now let's start simplifying here. Like I mentioned, we get that double negative, so that makes positive 25 on the outside there, plus or minus the big square root of 25 squared. Is that 625? It is. Minus 4 times 12 times 12. So what's 4 times 144? Or 4 times 12 times 12. 576. 576. And that's all divided by 2 times 12, which is just 24. Let's see if we can take this a little further here. I've got 25 plus or minus. What's 625 minus 576? Use that calculator. 625 minus 576. Oh, 49. Nice. It's going to turn out clean, guys. That's what we like. Because square root of 49 becomes 7. So I have 25 plus or minus 7 all divided by 24. Which means I have 25 plus 7 divided by 24. And I have 25 minus 7 divided by 24. 25 plus 7 gets me 32 over 24, which I can reduce because 8 goes into both of those. 8 goes in the top 4 times. 8 goes in the bottom 3 times. 25 minus 7, is that 18? It is. 18 divided by 24. Now, 18 and 24 has a common factor of 6. 6 goes into 18 3 times. 6 goes into 24 4 times. Wow, look at that. Huh. The answers were reciprocals of each other. They were the fractions flipped. That's, I don't know, that's ironic. Well, not ironic. Funny to me. 4/3, 3/4. Quadratic formula. So learning objective, just bringing it all back together. Learning objective, I could solve any quadratic, which you literally just saw. We did solving by factoring, solving by taking the square roots, solving by completing the square, and solving by quadratic formula. These methods we could use to solve any quadratic equation we want. Keep in touch.